mean, Kobe is literally like the distance from you and I.
He's so close.
Kobe, he's right there. He's got his FBI agent right next to him. There's security guards. I mean, people were it was like a magical moment. It was a great moment.
Yeah, people had their arms out and they were kind of touching you. Like it was like the walls were kind of closing in on us as well.
Hey guys, welcome to the episode. My name's Rush. I'm here with Nate.
How are you?
We're in Byron Bay. It's a scorching hot day. We've both had cold showers before we do this interview just to prepare for it. So how you feeling, Nate?
Pretty warm, but yeah, it's good to be here.
So Nate's had a really interesting career. We've been working together for a number of years, so I thought we'd dive into Nate's story so you guys can get to know him a little bit better. So Nate, let's take a trip down memory lane. Let's go back to when you and I first met. Do you want to tell the story?
Yeah, so it's a pretty crazy story, really. At the time when I was in Melbourne, I was DJing in some bars around town, and I was also working like casual retail. And you used to frequent Mr. Simple where I was at the time and do your annual shop.
So Mr. Simple's a clothing store too. That used to be my favorite shop.
You say used to be. And I think from memory, we kind of got chatting about some of the music that I was playing in store, and then which led to us both realizing that we're both hip hop heads. And I think maybe we made the connection that we'd both been DJs at some time as well. So we kind of had this sort of connection in a way, which kind of progressed from there. And I remember actually at the time when you were shopping, you were in and out of the store on your phone, taking a call here and there, and you're like, come back, do a bit of shopping, you're like, another phone call. And I think that's kind of where I asked you, like, what do you actually do? Like, what?
This guy a drug dealer? What's he up to?
This guy's a hustler. Like, what's he hustling here? And that's obviously when you were telling me about, what you do as a photographer, videographer, and a director.
And so I remember at the time you were just getting into photography, right? So what stage of your photographic career were you in when we met in the clothing store?
Well, I think actually it wasn't even at that stage because I didn't have my own camera then, but when I initially bought a camera, that was kind of when I was like, oh, there could be something there. I find this really interesting. But that kind of happened one Christmas when I was spending time with my family in the Gold Coast, and I just asked to borrow my brother's camera, and I just went out and just took some, photos of koalas and stuff like that, like just stuff that I'm not necessarily like interested in photographing now, but I just wanted to document parts of my holiday, and that kind of like piqued my interest a little bit, which kind of led to me reaching out to you. So I guess that when we initially met, I was kind of like, that was not where my head was at.
Because I remember at the time, you were saying that you were just getting into it. But the reason why I was keen to connect with you is because I could tell just from our conversation in the clothing store that you're a good person. And for me, that is like such an important part when working on big projects and, traveling. So I think this is a really important part that I want to touch on for people, because I get asked a lot, how do you get into the industry? Or how can I come and work with you? Or how do I, meet other creatives? And one of the things I always say to people is personality is extremely important. Yeah. So, what's your perspective on that? Like, how do you feel in terms of like, I guess, communication and personality? How's that been a playing factor for you in your career?
Yeah, I think personality plays a huge part. Obviously, it was good for us because we had, we were so influenced by hip-hop culture and DJing, so we kind of had that good foundation, which meant we were into a lot of the same things visually as well, and street culture and all of that. But I think personality, obviously it's good to have some type of skill set, but personality and communication is such a big part, whether that's with clients or talent, On some shoots we're working with a team of people, so you really need to be able to work together as a unit to get the end result.
That's very true, very true. So write that one down. Personality is key. Because I remember at the time when we first started working together, like your photos weren't anything amazing, but I could tell straight away that you had the eye for it because you were using quite a basic camera at that point.
Yeah.
So for me, I was like, okay, this guy, number one, you always turned up on time, and you still do to this day. So when Nate says he's going to be there at 8 o'clock, he comes at 8 o'clock.
I'm a stickler for being on time. Yeah.
So number one, I was like, okay, he's impressed me by turning up on time. He's really good with his communication. I can tell that, he's a trustworthy and good person. And even though your photos weren't like mind blowing at the time, I could see that you had a quirky element to your work.
Yeah.
So yeah, talk about, I guess, like the progress that you made from when we initially met to the next 6 to 12 months from that, that stage. Like, did you up your camera game? Did you go out and shoot more? How did you go about it?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, my camera was very basic because I didn't really know what I was looking for. I didn't have like a massive budget. But I guess at the time you don't really realize that the equipment isn't like the main factor in shooting at all. So I had something which was pretty compact, and I would just go out and shoot things that I liked, and looking for scenes just around Melbourne especially that kind of, I don't know, would remind me of things that I'd seen from movies, or just things I was really interested in or look kind of unique and quirky. And I sort of adapted a style of documenting from the streets of Melbourne, which I took into some of the jobs that we did together.
Massive blowfly.
Yeah, nice. Byron life. And then, so we're going back to like talking about the progression as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so because I adapted this style of essentially documenting, that is something that I managed to take onto sets and things like that, where I could be a photographer in the background that didn't get in the way, but would try and capture moments between like the crew and the subjects and things like that. So it was something that really helped in terms of the documentary style as well.
So, oh man, got this massive fly biting me.
Yeah, it's harassing us.
So now, I mean, look, you've been shooting for a number of years, and one thing I'd like to hear your thoughts on is about the camera gear in the sense that, guys like you and I, we get asked all the time, oh, what camera should I buy when I'm starting, or what lenses should I get? So you've started, obviously started off basic, and then you've gone on to own very high quality gear. How important is the camera gear now that you've experienced both sides of it?
Yeah, it's funny because the initial setup that I had was super basic, but then when I started to really get into it, I was like, oh, I need this lens, and I need that lens, and I need this lens, and all of a sudden I'd collected a bunch of fixed lenses at different focal lengths, but in a way that kind of complicated shooting for me, where a lot of the times I couldn't decide, or I'd switch from one to another and back and forth, and I was like, why am I wasting my time doing this when I can just simplify my setup and just work with what I've got? And that's also something that I learned with street photography was, having a prime, like a fixed focal length. Sometimes I had to move around to get the image that I wanted, which was, I think, really a good thing for me. So I think in a way, like, your gear doesn't matter all that much. You don't want to overcomplicate it. You don't need to know your camera inside and out. You really just want to know the things that are going to suit your style of shooting, I think is a key thing.
Now, one thing I'd like to touch on is, so we met at the clothing store, and where has photography taken you? Because photography, in my opinion, is one of the best art forms to get involved in, because it's a great tool for networking, getting yourself into some pretty incredible doors. Where has it led you in your life?
I mean, it's taken me on some amazing journeys, and so many opportunities, and also just meeting other creators as well is really interesting. And that's the one thing I've always taken from it, is I've always been eager to learn, but it hasn't always been about learning just photography. Like, lighting and sound and all of those things really interest me. And, DPs as well, the way that they shoot video. I feel like there's so much to learn from all these other people in the industry and things like that. So I think that's been such a good thing for me, taking from other people's experiences and things like that, and their approaches to the way that they work, even if it is just a sound guy and things like that. It's still really interesting to me. So yeah, I think it's taken me on a learning journey, and a really good one too, because I feel like I thrive more when I'm getting something from it. Yeah.
Now, speaking of sound, you still DJ at times now, but you were focusing on your DJing a lot more in the past. You've worked in fashion and retail. How have those elements impacted and helped your photography?
I guess, yeah, it's kind of, they've always been, I don't know how to explain that.
Well, because I can butt in here, and the way I'm seeing it from, you worked in retail and in fashion, so that obviously helps in a major way when we're doing shoots, because I know that when we're working on projects together, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, oh, Nate's really good with fashion. He's got a great attention to detail. If he thinks the model or the subject that we're shooting looks good, then I know it's good. So in that sense.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I'm definitely quite picky when it comes to, colors, tones, and all of that. So yeah, I've definitely learned a lot from working retail, and fashion and things like that, to kind of have an understanding of what looks good, or what I think looks good, or styling and things like that. Because even when you're doing, let's just say, visual merchandising, there needs to be a type of storytelling with colors and things like that, which leads to, I guess, like storyboards and mood boards and things like that. So, and I'd say with the DJing aspect as well, DJing is it is a social environment, but also it can be quite like a lonely journey, because you're the person, you're playing out all this music, but you're connecting with people in a very, very unique way. And I feel like that still resonates and crosses over with photography as well, because you get that kind of deeper connection with your subjects, which essentially what DJing is like as well.
So a common theme that, is amongst photographers, videographers, I mean, a lot of creatives in general is, we're introverts and shy, and we like to be amongst the action, but then also, not be in the spotlight. Where am I going with this? I was like, yes. Oh no. So where I want to go with this question is, how has photography given you confidence? Because one thing that is a common theme is people are really lacking in confidence. Even extremely successful photographers, and for guys like you and I, there's times where we might doubt ourselves when we're about to do a big shoot, like, oh my God, like, should I really be here? Yeah. So what is photography, firstly, what has it done for you confidence-wise?
Oh, it's completely boosted my confidence. And, going back to talking about DJing as well, I definitely still lacked a lot of confidence doing that, but I could express myself through the music. But with photography and meeting so many different people from different areas, it's boosted my confidence a lot. And don't get me wrong, like, I still turn up to shoots where I'm a little bit on edge and kind of nervous, and you don't know what to expect. But in a way, I've kind of learned to use that to my advantage, because if I'm doubting myself during a shoot, I'm going to work extra hard to make sure that I really get what I want from that, or what the client wants. So I work even harder and grind harder to get that result. So in a way, it kind of helps me. Yeah.
Okay, so let's say you just turned up to a shoot and you're feeling a little nervous. How do you go about tackling those nerves?
I think the best thing you can do is break the ice as much as possible. So if you're dealing with a model, introducing yourself, and checking out your location. I mean, this is all stuff that we generally do beforehand anyway, but if that's not the case, it's just being comfortable in the environment, take a look around, check the lighting situation, and just start ticking off all the boxes that you want to look for. That's just going to help you kind of, do the shoot and nice and smoothly.
And another common question that we get asked is about, imposter syndrome. So for a photographer that is lacking in confidence, what advice would you give to them to build their confidence? What's one or two tips that you would suggest to really boost their confidence going into a shoot or wanting to pursue photography a little more seriously?
I think probably one of the biggest tips is, it's easier to say than to actually do, but is to be sure of yourself and trust in the process. Don't get too caught up in the things like the gear and things like that. And sometimes you can get to the point where you just want to overshoot because you're like, well, the more I have, the better, but that's not always necessarily the case. Sometimes you need to take yourself away from the situation, gather your thoughts again and be like, okay, let's try something different. Let's not just go over with this same pose or the same lighting situation and things like that. So sometimes taking a break can really kind of help you there, because it is easy to get caught up and just be like, I'm going to keep snapping away as much as possible, and then I'm going to troll through these 1,000 photos to find the one good one. But sometimes if you stop and you actually really, really think about it, go back to your reference points if you have some, like your storyboards, your mood board, and then you can be like, okay, let's try something different. And also, if you're shooting a subject, you can ask them for some feedback as well.
Now, one shoot that I'd love to dive into is the Kobe Bryant shoot. Because you and I have worked on a lot of projects together, but this was by far, I think, well, personally for me, the most nervous I was
at
the shoot.
Sure.
So I think it'd be interesting to talk about, even when you are experienced, just the pressure that you can face. So to give us some context for people watching this, I'm shooting the video, you're doing the photography. We're at Crown in Melbourne. There's about 2,500 people in the room. We're waiting for Kobe Bryant to enter. This is the grand entrance. What was going through your head prior to this shoot or this moment? Because we'll play a clip on the screen so people can get a sense of, what was going on. But I mean, this was not only a big moment because it's Kobe Bryant, but the lighting was extremely difficult. We won't get into all the technical aspects, but the light was essentially, the room was dark, and then as soon as Kobe walked in, the lights were going to, be blaring. So it can be very hard to get your settings right. There's people jumping all over us. But yeah, I'd love to hear it from your perspective, because, I mean, you and I, obviously we talk about it all the time, but we haven't actually gone into depth about it, and it's a extremely memorable night. So yeah, what was it like from your point of view?
Yeah, I mean, that was absolutely wild. So nervous. I think there was just a lot going on. There's a lot of people there. There's a lot of people that paid big money to see Kobe. And also we were there to do a job, but you don't really get all the information, so we don't really know what time certain things are happening. So you just need to be somewhere at a certain time and hope for the best. And I think there we were like, okay, this is what we're dealing with. Big room, poor lighting. Apparently he's going to walk out of here, and we don't really know how it's going to go. We both need to basically walk backwards while shooting. So yeah, I was I was so nervous. I remember as time went on, the more time I had, the worse it got, because I kept changing my camera settings, being like, okay, this is a guesswork. Go this way. No, go that way. Oh, is it going to be bright? Is it not going to be? So yeah, that was crazy. I'm getting nervous even thinking about that now, like the pressure. But I think also at the time we both agreed that we could only get what we could get out of that, and it's not like, yeah, the stars basically had to be aligned for us to both get a good shot. And yeah, somehow it did work out.
I mean, honestly, for me, it is probably the highlight of my career, that moment. Like, just the number one, it's Kobe. That's what makes it extremely special. But the fact that like we had people jumping like all over us, and personally from my end, I was like, there's no way this shot's going to look any good. And I was thinking to myself, Nate's got nothing.
Yeah,
there's no way Nate's got anything.
He's got my back. That's all he's shooting.
Because I'm filming. I'm on a gimbal, so I'm holding the camera like this. Nate's literally pulling my shirt back like this.
Guiding,
you were shooting one-handed,
I was guiding you backwards with my camera over your shoulder, shooting one-handed. So it was just like the wild, wild west. Like, yeah, it was insane. I mean, my biggest concern was because I was leading the pack. If I tripped over, it was game over. You would have toppled over, and then Kobe would have just been like, who the hell are these guys? Like,
and that's a very important factor to mention here. I mean, Kobe is literally like the distance from you and I.
He's so close, yeah.
And the thing is, like, Kobe, he's right there. He's got his FBI agent right next to him. There's security guards. I mean, people were it was like a magical moment. It was a great moment.
Yeah, people had their arms out and they were kind of touching you. Like, it was like the walls were kind of closing in on us as well.
And I mean, this is the thing too. Not only do we want to get great videos and great photos because it's Kobe, but the pressure from the client. This is the moment, and particularly, this is the thing, not to put too much pressure on other photographers and, ourselves, but there's just certain moments that you've got to nail the shots. And I think this is where, the classic 10,000 hours and, the hard work over the years, it sets you up for moments like this. I think, yeah, it's great that, a lot of aspiring photographers and videographers, you want to shoot high profile people and you want to get in these situations, but you've got to put in the hours and the work to make sure that you knock these kind of situations out the park. Because if I threw you in a situation like this after just, a couple of weeks or a couple of months of meeting each other, like, there's no way that you would have been able to handle this.
No, I wouldn't have realized that, I could set my camera up in a way that would allow me to try and, get something like the shots that I did, which is pretty amazing, because I didn't think I would have gotten anything out of that. I was just happy to not fall over.
Yeah. And I mean, you've got this one hero image of Kobe that you've taken that I post everywhere. I've even printed it in my studio. I've got it framed. It looks like it's been set up. Like, if Nike wanted to set up like the ultimate Kobe Bryant shot, I'm not just saying it because you took it, but that is, particularly now because he's passed away, that is such a special and iconic photo. So, I mean, how does it feel for you knowing you've got a photo of Kobe Bryant that is just like an all-time classic?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely amazing considering what we just spoke about, the fact that, it's not just me standing in front of Kobe with all of like this space. Considering the situation, it's amazing that I managed to like even kind of frame it like that, considering you're ahead of me. Like, it's just one in a million, really.
So not only have you worked with Kobe, you've also worked with another big Australian basketball player, Ben Simmons, and we got to fly around on some helicopters and work with him. Firstly, I mean, what's your perspective on working with celebrities and high-profile athletes? Like, do you get excited by it? Is it something that you look forward to? Or do you prefer just shooting like, the average person on the street? Like, yeah, I've never really asked you that before. I'd be curious to know.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of enjoy all aspects. And I know that kind of sounds cheesy, but you can take something from all of those situations. And I think the craziest thing that I've learned from working with, you know, celebrities and things like that is there's so many moving parts to everything that they do. It's like every step of the way, especially with someone like Kobe, like it's choreographed, you know, he's got a team of people that knows every movement and everything's planned and mapped out, and then you're there for like little small snippets to capture kind of something. So it's also really weird to get a glimpse into what that lifestyle is like. So yeah, I think it's pretty amazing opportunity, but it's still pretty crazy, and I do get nervous doing those types of gigs. There's still more pressure, but I still take something away from all aspects of, even just when I'm shooting street stuff or film stuff for myself. Yeah.
I mean, I've got to say, I think this is what's so cool about the work that we do. Having a camera in our hands, the doors that it's opened up is insane. You know, like we've mentioned Kobe. I mean, this Ben Simmons shoot was a special experience. I think we had 3 helicopters.
Yeah, it was three helicopters. It was like
a Ferrari.
It was a full Melbourne experience on that high profile level, which is just probably something I'll never experience again, maybe. But yeah, just getting in helicopters and flying around and going to like animal sanctuaries and going out for classic like Melbourne burgers and all of these things. It was pretty epic.
Now, I've never asked you this question. Who is like your dream person to photograph, or your dream scenario?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I actually don't know.
Okay, that's all right.
Like
you've conquered it all already. You had Kobe
definitely not. I mean, oh God, there's just so many interesting people out there, but I think it would have to be, I can't pinpoint it to a particular person, but it would definitely be somebody in either the music industry or the sports industry for sure. Like skateboarding's been a big part of my life since I was growing up as a kid. Some really interesting people in that scene.
Like Tony Hawk or something like that. Yeah,
or like the Gons, Mark Gonzalez. He's a really kind of quirky, inspiring character in the skateboard scene. And he'd be amazing to shoot. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Now, one thing I love about your photography is you've got an extremely quirky style. So when we've worked on music videos and a lot of our projects, you're always in between moments going off and photographing like a lot of these quirky characters in the streets.
Yeah.
And you've got like that. You have a very strong style with your street photography. You've got a very unique, element to your photography. And I always love seeing the photos that you get. And I'm really curious, like, how do you go about documenting these people on the street? Like, is it something that, is there a particular thing that you're looking for, or because photographing people on the street is a very like particular skill and it can be very intimidating to do this. Yeah. But when you look at your images, you can tell these people have no idea that you're around.
Yeah.
So how do you tackle it?
Well, I think for me, like that candid sort of documenting style really resonates, and I really like that the subjects wouldn't really notice me. I kind of like being a fly on the wall, and that's something that's also helped in my career as a photographer as well. But yeah, I mean, sometimes I'm on the street and I just see something, and it could be a split-second decision, and it could be a case of just who the person is or the backdrop, or it's just an idea, and it's something that's so kind of spontaneous. And a lot of the times I'm just like, I don't really give a lot of thought to it. And sometimes I'll look back on the image and be like, like that's crazy. Like I didn't expect to get that. And obviously sometimes you put a lot of thought and you're like, you've got a setting or a backdrop and you're waiting for someone to come into the frame, and then you spend all of this time, and then the photo you're like, I don't really like that.
Now, one story that I got to touch on is Nate and I went over to Asia to work on a project with Twitter, and this will always haunt me, this trip. But long story short, we were flying to Singapore to then go to various locations around Asia. And unfortunately, I got extremely sick. I got food poisoning, like literally as we took off from Brisbane to go to Singapore. I spent the whole time throwing up for 8-9 hours in the bathroom on this plane ride. So we had to stay in Singapore. I was completely bedridden for about 3 to 4 days. They actually carried me out on a wheelchair from the flight. That's how bad it was.
I've got the photos to prove it.
yeah. But you had a great time. Like, I was in the Airbnb just knocked out, slowly dying, and you were out taking all these incredible photos. I mean, yeah, like, because were you shooting on film or were you shooting digital?
Yeah, I had a bunch of film with me. I think I had my point and shoot and maybe my Leica at the time. So I just went out and was shooting a bunch of film. So, I mean, obviously, I'm going to go back a little bit here. We were flying with Emirates to Singapore, and I don't normally fall asleep on airplanes. It's very rare that I do, but I managed to doze off for a bit, and we weren't sitting together. You were sitting further up from me, and it wasn't until we were kind of closer to our destination that I started stirring, and I woke up, and then all of a sudden I had the staff tapping me on the shoulder and basically telling me that Rush was really sick and that he was up in business or first class, and I could go up there and sit with him. I was like, shit, like, why didn't you tell me earlier? Like, so I got to be like a baller for like the last, I don't know, 40 minutes or something of the flight. But obviously you were struggling a lot.
Oh man, yeah. Like, I won't go into it, but yeah, that was a crazy time.
Yeah,
So,
and then obviously at the airport you were just lying on the floor. But then you had all the information about where we were staying, everything. So I was kind of like felt helpless in the situation and be like, where are we going? Like, what do we do next? We've got all this gear and things like that. Obviously it sucked for you, great for me, because I basically had a trip where I could go out and do the things that I really love, and that was shooting film and documenting people and their environments. And, you know, like for me, going to places like markets and things like that is the best way to get in touch with different cultures. I feel like that's where you really get a sense of like a place is food markets and things like that. Like when I was in Barcelona, all the markets I went to there, it's just so amazing. Like, it's a gold mine for what I like to do. And yeah, Singapore was crazy. There's this place called Little India that I went to a few times. It was quite a big walk from the accommodation we were staying, but it was so worth it. And I just spent all day just checking out the people and the sites and the buildings and the fruit markets. And yeah, it was really good. But
well, quickly on that note, what advice would you have for people that are doing street photography in other countries? Like, is there anything that you suggest you got to be wary of, or any tips on how to capture particular moments?
yeah, I mean, there's obviously times where, you know, street photography can be one of those things where you interact with your subjects and you can ask them if you can take a photo of them, and that's great. That wasn't really the style that I wanted. I wanted to just stop a moment in time the way that I saw it at the time. So you really need to be good at kind of reading people in a sense, because you don't want to upset anyone, especially if it's not the language that you speak. And you also want to be respectful for them and what they do. So yeah, like, it's a big thing of people in street photography just taking photo of homeless people and things like that. It's just, you want to be respectful to the subject as much as possible.
Now let's speed up and get into the one-shot stuff that we're currently working on. And I wanted to touch on the Brisbane meetup that we did a few months ago. Because initially, when I was planning this and putting it together, I thought we're going to have about 20, 30 people at the most turn up. And then within the first, I think, 10 days, I had something like 300 people sign up to the Brisbane meetup. And I was like, oh my God, like, you know, this is going to be a block party instead of a photography meetup. So for people that haven't been to one of the meetups, how was it from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was such an amazing experience. Like, I didn't know what to expect either, but being in that environment with all of these creators that were just so hungry to network and share stories and shoot these models, like, I left that photography meetup feeling so fulfilled, and it definitely, sparked like something within me that I guess I hadn't really thought about in such a long time. And yeah, it was just amazing to see people connecting in that sense, especially after, going through COVID where everyone was just so separated and divided. Yeah.
And what about in terms of community? Because obviously people are coming for the photography, but how is it for networking and building relationships?
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, people that were reaching out to me, and we were exchanging socials, and I could see all of these. So after the meetup, the people that were following me and I was following them, they had also made loads of connections. So all of a sudden you could see that all of these people that didn't know each other, all of a sudden like checking out each other's work. And yeah, I think it's a great opportunity for networking with other like-minded creatives.
Awesome. All right, well, Nate, thanks so much for coming on the show, bro.
Thanks for having me.
You got anything that you want to add before we finish up?
One shot, baby, for life.
Let's go. Frame your dream.